All right. Welcome to Getting to Wisconsin Sports. I'm your host, John Giddings.
And I'm your co-host, Kenny Campbell here.
All right. And we are here to talk about Packers football upcoming season, most notably the passing game without Davante Adams. Let's get right into it. So recently, Aaron Rodgers made some comments about the receiving core and just some of their struggles in the opening preseason game. They had a lot of drops. Remember, there were a couple picks that Jordan Love threw that were off the hands of receivers. And he basically he just he kept it frank. He said, if you don't run the right routes, if you don't catch the ball, you don't play. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and it's really big because with Aaron Rodgers, especially not playing preseason, he won't get that time to kind of mesh with his receivers, and that's going to hurt week one, especially like later in the year. It might get a little bit better, but with the guys returning back, yeah, he played with like Lazard and those guys, but they're a lot younger, so they need those reps.
Right. And the truth is, like, we see some of the rookie receivers that they drafted, like Watson and Dobbs, and I think that's how you pronounce his name. And Toure said he might not make the team, or he'll probably be deep on the depth chart. But they seem to have some like raw ability. They got some length, they got a little speed, but you can tell they need a lot of polish.
Yeah, and I think just from the experience of playing, like the quarterback to receiver bonds, you have to be on the same mental page. And I think that's going to be the biggest kind of concern for me watching it is just that mental page of knowing when to run certain routes, when to cut something off, kind of being in Aaron Rodgers' mind to see what he sees. And at younger guys, it's really, really hard to develop that, especially if they're not getting that time in game. Like practice is fine, but the in-game time is where they need to be able to build that. That's what the preseason is so important for.
Yeah. And you talk about the passing game in football in general. It's people just, a lot of people who like don't really know the game on the level that that a lot of people, let's say like you and me, would know it. They think that, oh well, Aaron Rodgers, he's just such a great quarterback, he can make any receiver look good. And while that's true, that has been true for a lot of his career. First off, he's 39 years old, so at this point it's not that easy for him. And secondly, there's just something about a chemistry that a quarterback has with the receiver. Rodgers had it with Jordy Nelson early on, and then he developed it with Davante Adams. It's not just simple where, well, one guy has these statistics and one guy has these statistics. Well, they're going to be good. Like, no, like there's just a certain mental bond that a quarterback has with the receiver, just that communication level.
Agree, and that's kind of why even last year when the bringing back of Randall Cobb was so big for the Packers because Randall Cobb knew Aaron Rodgers is kind of the way he thinks and the way he's going to get you the ball. And especially coming from a college receiver, the offense is completely different. It's like going from kindergarten to like a college and the things you have to know mid play, not even before the play, mid play of if this guy goes this way, all right, I got to move this way because Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the ball this way. And Aaron Rodgers is great at throwing his guys open, but it's harder for the receiver to actually get in the mindset of where does he expect me to be? And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for him.
Right. And just the truth is, and not just and that's just on the receiver standpoint, but even from Rodgers' standpoint, like you he does not have that target. He does not have that target that he had. He knew that if he couldn't go to anybody else, he could go to Adams. That turned into a problem in the San Francisco game where other receivers were open and he still was just throwing to Adams. Remember when Lazard didn't have anybody within 10 yards of him and he still tried to throw it deep to Adams. I mean, but that just stemmed from the fact that he just had that chemistry with him that he didn't have anywhere near with any of the other guys. And now the only guy that's back is Lazard. And he has, like you say, he has somewhat of a chemistry with him, but not on the level that he had, not even on the level that he had with Adams. And then these other guys, they're unproven. I mean, there's going to be a lot of checkdowns. Who I think are going to be big weapons in the passing game are Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon.
I think Aaron Jones is going to have a huge year this year catching the football because I think that the whole saga with Adams, it started with, to me, the franchise tagging him. Like a lot of people don't understand what franchise tagging as a football player is like kind of the ultimate disrespect at a level that he's at. It's kind of saying, I don't care about your career. We're just going to pay for you for this year. And he's a guy that was looking for a long-term deal. And they were banking on Lazard being the guy because he has it physically, everything that you need. But the actual in-game, and like you said in the last game they played where Aaron Rodgers doesn't trust him. And trust is the biggest thing between the receiver and the quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, And you look at like Lazard, like, yeah, he's got the physical tools, well, except for the speed. He's not
Yeah.
the one thing about Lazard, he's not that fast. But the truth is Devontae Adams wasn't really all that fast. Like, if you went, I always said about Devontae Adams, he reminded me a lot of Anquan Bolden. That was exactly because Bolden was super slow, but not super slow, but you get what I mean. By
Relative slow,
receiver
yeah.
standpoint. But I mean, that man could catch anything, and he ran like the best routes in the league for a long time. Like, to me, he was the most underrated receiver in the league when he was around.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think a lot of fans get stuck on okay, this guy runs a 4.2 40, but a lot of the DBs are just as fast, or if not faster than the receivers. Or what it comes down to is your route running, and route running is such a technique and it's such a complex thing to do because it's kind of quarterback to quarterback, of where that you got to learn where your quarterback wants you to be and how to get there at the right time for your quarterback. So it's kind of that relationship is just it's a lot more complex. Like I said, complex, and I think people actually kind of can think of. They're like, okay, this guy's fast and he'll just get open. No, because you even think about like Jerry Rice wasn't that fast.
No,
Like
not
a
at
lot of
all.
the great receivers weren't that fast. They just knew how to get to the spot where their quarterback wanted them to be. And the great receivers can do it for multiple quarterbacks.
You talk about that speed, and then we mix it with height too. Look what everybody thought Marquez Valdes-Scantling was going to be, and he never developed. Now he's playing with the Chiefs. I mean, maybe he can develop that chemistry with Mahomes, but he he was so fast, so tall. Everybody thought he'll eventually be great, and it just never happened because he never developed that route running like you said, and he dropped the ball too much too.
Yeah. And I truly believe as like an NFL receiver, like you shouldn't drop a ball because it would be kind of like any other professional job that you have, like just not doing your job. Your first job as a receiver, and every receiver coach will say this is catch the ball. Anything beyond catching the ball is plus, but the first thing that your only responsibility is to catch the ball when it's thrown to you. And that's the thing when we talked about what Aaron Rodgers talking about the drops is so big because at that level you cannot make mistakes. And it was a lot of mistakes made in the preseason. Granted, it was coming from the backup quarterback, but it was still mistakes that you can see will carry over to the season.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jordan Love, and we're going to talk about him later. But honestly, two of those three picks he threw in that preseason game were off receivers' hands. I mean, that says it all right there.
Yeah, and that's unacceptable. And as a quarterback, if that happens, I'm not going to throw that guy the ball again just because of it's a league at quarterback where it's an incentive driven league too, where like you get X amount of picks, your money drops down.
Right.
So and that might be built into the contracts where like, hey, that's too risky. I'm just gonna go to the guy I know that at least will catch it.
Right, exactly. And like you said, in the stat book, that's the quarterback's fault. He threw the pick, but it's like if you actually a lot of times, teams that are looking to sign somebody, they might not even watch much. I mean, they'll watch game film, but still they'll just look, oh, he had this many interceptions. Like, I mean, when
Yeah.
two of them bounce off a receiver's hands, like what are you gonna do?
Exactly. That's why when I look at some quarterbacks that people call like busts or in general, I'm like, okay, let's look at their receiving core and look at the age of their receiving core and the consistency of their receiving core. That's why like the scouts are so important on that level because you might have a guy that has terrible stats and he literally might have been playing with receivers that were just setting them up for failure. And on the opposite
Right,
end, you might have a guy where you have a burner like a Odell Beckham Jr. that can make any quarterback look good. So it's kind of
Andre
the
Hopkins.
catch all, exactly the catch all to that. Like, okay, what is this guy's actual production like in the game, and how will it translate to the team that we're playing for? And I think with the receivers, their actual production is so low right now, and it's kind of expected being a younger group. Let's be honest. Like none of those guys were showcased. We don't have a true number one right now. It's kind of everybody trying to develop or kind of compete for that number one spot. It's kind of been like given to Lazard, but hasn't had time to develop with Aaron Rodgers. So is he? We don't know yet.
And then in the tight end department, you had a guy who was breaking out last year in Robert Tunyon, but then he tore his ACL. So that's a big question mark. I mean, is he even going to be available to play? And well, he probably won't be as good because one thing about Tunyon, he was explosive. He was kind of a tight end with some receiver speed, but obviously you tear your ACL, you don't come back from that very quickly, especially when you got a little more weight on you like a tight end would have.
Yeah, and just playing in the trenches. Like I know I tore my ACL in college, and my speed dropped dramatically. One, but also just the confidence to be able to do certain movements or block. And him being on the line and having a block, I guarantee his confidence is just, okay, I don't want to get my leg in this position because if a guy crashes on my knee, it's just it's a mental block that he's going to have that he's going to work through. And it's probably going to take a season or two to work through that realistically. Everyone's not like AP where he came back after ACL and just started running, ready to go. But that's a different kind of confidence level. With guys like Tonyan, it's going to be tough because he wasn't a star. He was a really good player that was getting to that next level of, okay, he's getting to that A tier tight end, but just because of his physical capabilities. But without that confidence, it's going to take a big drop on him. And he would have been a great weapon for Aaron Rodgers to have if the receiving core wasn't producing as they were, along with Aaron Jones.
Right. And honestly, this year, had Tonyan not gotten his knee hurt, Tonyan probably would maybe be the number one option this year. Because, I mean, he'd have been coming off a breakout year and they don't have receivers. Like, Rodgers would have been looking at him like crazy.
Yeah.
Almost like he was looking for Jermichael Finley before he had those unfortunate injuries.
For sure. And it hurts for the red zone. That's the thing. When you get in that red zone, that tight end is the most important position to have for run and for pass. And it's going to hurt missing them in there. And it's going to drop. I think it's going to drop Aaron Rodgers' production down. I don't see an MVP type season this year. I can't see it with the tools that he has.
Yeah, I don't either. And we mentioned how the running backs would be big in the receiving game. I think Aaron Jones, like you said, will be big in the passing game because I think Dillon will be used more as the running back.
Yep.
I think you could see Aaron Jones getting more into like a James White role or something like that. Remember James White, who just retired to play for the Badgers and then play for the Patriots? He was able to carve out a good career because he was big. They used him as a receiving back. And you can see I don't know if Aaron Jones will be used that widely in the passing game. He'll still get his carries, but he will be used more in the passing game, while I think Dillon will be more the featured running back.
I agree. I think because Dillon is more of a downhill guy anyways. And I think that Aaron Jones will be more of he's probably going to still be like a 20-touch game, but it's probably going to be spread like 12 runs, eight catches, that type of game. And I guarantee they'll use a screen game a whole lot this year just because of that, of the lack of trust in those receivers.
Right. And the one advantage, talk about the screen game, you could throw to Lazard's side, because one thing about Lazard is a very good blocking receiver.
Oh yeah.
One thing about him.
Oh yeah, and that's why I don't want to diminish Lazard. He's a younger guy and he hasn't had time to be a number one. I think he's a future number one guy. I think that just the development with your starting quarterback, and it may be good for the future that him and Love got time to get together, because if that's going to be the future, they need that mesh and they need to be working in the offseason and together. So it may be good for the long term, but the immediate success of the Packers, it's going to be a struggle for him because Aaron Rodgers, the ball coming out of Aaron Rodgers' hand is a lot different than coming out of Jordan Love's hand.
Right. Yeah, that goes without saying. But I will say, before we get to our next segment on the defense, I will say that Rodgers did come out with some comments. I didn't read them, so I can't speak too much on them, but there was a headline saying that they have been getting better though lately.
Mm-hmm. And that's what happens that's why the preseason is so important for the young guys. I kind of like how the Packers played it this year, where a lot of the young guys that will be playing in the season did get a lot of playing time in the preseason. And that's kind of a tip of the cap to the head coach to know, okay, injuries be damned, I got to get these guys on the field. I got to get them on the field. They need reps. They just need reps, and they need real live game reps so I can really see what I got and truly evaluate who's going to step up or who's going to kind of fall and fold under the pressure.
Exactly. All right, so next thing is the defense. The defense for the last couple of years has been an improvement. They've had a defense on the level that can get them a Super Bowl, but they just haven't been able to come through in the playoffs. Especially the offense hasn't really been able to. But yeah, why don't you give me some more thoughts? Just do you think the defense can continue their level of play with what they have this year?
I think it's the biggest thing with the Packers defense, which is they don't have the depth there at the D line and the linebacker core is a little thin. But if our guys up front can stay healthy, that front eight, or I guess it'd be seven for the Packers, they kind of flip back and forth. But I think if they can stay healthy, it's going to be a really good year on defense, because the biggest thing, they can get after the ball. They get the quarterback. If you can get after the quarterback, and it throws timing off, it throws everything off. And I think the way that we rush and having our big guy in the middle that's actually healthy and ready to go, Kenny Clark, and I think it's going to be a really, really big thing for the back end of the defensive backs. Because our defensive backs, I will put them up against most of the DB cores in the league. Mm-hmm. Just 4-on-4, 7-on-7 type drills. I will put our guys against most of them. But if they have to cover for 5-6 seconds, it's going to be really, really tough. So we need a pass rush, which they have been doing. So after watching this preseason, I'm pretty confident the defense is going to end up being a top 5 defense in the NFL if everyone can stay healthy.
Absolutely. And when you talked about, having to cover for, more than 5 seconds, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth there. Cause I was thinking like you look the best pass, especially in today's game, which is much more pass happy than, the game back in the 2000s or whatever. A good pass rush is actually your best passing defense. Cause no matter how good your DBs are, eventually somebody's going to get open. That's just how football works. Somebody eventually gets open.
Exactly. And I think I didn't see our whole non-conference schedule, but I think that's going to be the big thing too of what receiving cores are we playing against? Are we playing against guys that have like burners? Because Jair is probably top 3 in the league at corner. Stokes is a little bit younger. He's developing, but I think he's a good number 2 corner. And our safety game is going to be good. But I think the corners, playing those corners, and actually who's going to be that third corner to play the nickel are going to be the 3 most important things on the field for us this year. Because, like I said, I'm super confident in the pass rush. Like that's what you've seen them get after the ball. But at that level, it's so hard to cover guys for a long time. It's impossible. It's
Right.
impossible.
Yep. And I'm looking. I just pulled up when you mentioned you don't know which offenses. I'm pulling up their schedule right now. They've got games against, obviously, they play the Vikings twice. That's division, but they've got the Buccaneers. They've got the Bills. They're playing on the road in Buffalo. They've got the Cowboys at home. They've got the Titans, I guess. They got the Rams at home. They got the Rams, so that's obviously a big one. And yeah, so as far as like passing attacks that really like we know will be tough, those are the ones that are on their schedule right now. You never know, like, because some of the other guys are playing, like they're playing the Dolphins, who, they just picked up Tyreek Hill, and nobody thinks anything about, everybody thinks Tua is gonna be weak, but he could be better than people think. He hears all the talk.
Yeah, and he's a winner. I mean, he came from a winning program. Like winners usually step up, and he winning that job he did in college he won it for a reason there. Yeah, Bama's a run heavy offense, but he still led that team. So you can never count guys like that out. Another guy is like especially the Bills offense. I'm a little bit nervous about to play against. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, always the Rams. Always the Rams.
Yeah, they just won a Super Bowl for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you mentioned that winning program. They're also playing the Patriots this year, who have Mac Jones. So, and the kind of steps he could take this year.
Exactly, and that's the thing that I think. Actually, doing a fantasy draft yesterday, watching my buddy do a fantasy draft yesterday, I realized it's a lot of young players that are on that cusp of being like the guys, and it's kind of like a proven year for a lot of these guys. So I think that it's going to be some out of nowhere kind of offenses. And I don't know which team is going to be that we play, but there's going to be a couple guys that come out of nowhere that just have a great years that we're not really accounting for now because we can't foresee the future. But it's going to be, that's why I circle back to the D-line, and the D-line and the outside linebackers. They have to be able to control the pace of the game with the pass. They have to be able to get after the quarterback, and maybe not sack wise or but making every quarterback uncomfortable. Because if quarterback's comfortable in the NFL, these guys are like savants. They're gonna find the guys that are open, but you gotta put something in their face and make them uncomfortable.
A guy who I think needs to maybe take another step up, because he took a big step last year, but needs to take another step, is Rashawn Gary. It'd be nice to see him become one of the best pass rushers in the league. He already, had a pretty good year last year, because first couple years people were calling him a bust. The Packers took a chance and he didn't work out. But then last year, he had like 8.5, 9 sacks, something like that. I think this year he's got to have double-digit sacks. I want to see that from him.
For sure, and that's a thing where, especially on defense, when people call especially the linebacker core and the D line, it's so hard to kind of evaluate them early, especially from a fan perspective, where you just want to see numbers and you want to see like the big plays on the field. But it's so complicated, especially at the linebacker position, to learn what the offense is doing, and understanding how to study for those games is a more difficult process. So it's a harder learning curve for those guys. But when they come on like he did last year, having, like you said, 8.5 sacks. Like, I think that was something really good for him to build on. I think he'll be okay at linebacker this year. I think he'll have if he, like you said, double-digit sacks is kind of that's almost all pro level numbers. But I think that he has the ability to do it. It's kind of if he's put in the position. And again, I know I keep going back to it. That falls on his D line. If his D line can fill gaps to actually get him the space to be able to make plays.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think and they made kind of an under the radar pickup this year. They picked up Jaron Reed, who I think he played for the Seahawks. He was like he was a decent defensive lineman. I always thought Dean Lowry was underrated too. I always thought he's a smart, instinctual player, real strong up front too. He's not a guy who gets a lot of like big stats like sacks or anything like that, but he makes plays and he opens the door for guys like him, open the door for linebackers to get in there and make the plays. Because
Yeah.
the truth is in today's game, outside linebackers are where the pass rush comes from.
Yeah.
Back in the day, back in the 2000s, there were the big defensive ends like Jared Allen, Julius Peppers, those types of guys. But now you've got, Von Miller, Rashawn Gary, DeMarcus Ware before he retired. It's transitioned more to outside linebackers now
Yeah.
because most teams run 3-4 defenses. Most run less defensive linemen.
For sure. And having that stand-up linebacker on the, like, you're putting a big athlete on a, and it's some tackles in the league that are athletic as well. One, Ryan Ramczyk, who actually coached at Stevens Point for when he was there for a year. But the he's actually hurt, I believe, right now too. But it's a couple like tackles, right and left tackles that can actually athletically can compete. But when you put those big, strong, athletic guys on the outside, they're kind of the staple of their anchor of your defense. Where okay,
Mhm.
we're going to try to make the defense so we can get him a one-on-one. And if he can get a one-on-one, if he can win 5 times out of 10, that might be result in 2 sacks for us, which is that's a player of the game type game if you get 2 sacks on the
All
defensive
right.
side. So
Exactly.
it's kind of dependent on that.
And like and to your point earlier, it's not just about getting a sack per se. Like if you can just rush the quarterback, make him force him to make a throw where he throws it away on third down or rushes a throw and it ends up right in the DB's hands. It's just there's just so much to having a pass rush. And Preston Smith mentioned that. Preston Smith, he had a down year last year. So
Yep.
he's a good bounce back candidate.
Yep.
And now and with drafting Quay Walker and they brought back Devondre Campbell too. Now you got two studs in the middle who are going to be able to make plays sideline to sideline, and it frees up the outside linebackers to strictly focus on getting to that quarterback in the passing game.
Yep. I love how Campbell's developed. He's actually solid because that was our Packers for the last probably about 10 years, besides AJ Hawk and even Nick Barnett and those guys, to have a stable two actual middle linebackers, especially the defense that we play, that can actually really patrol that middle and control between the tackles. And I think both those guys can, where they have enough size and they're fast so they can move around where it, like you said, it frees up the outside guys to be able to send guys off the edge and actually not have to worry about in the run game where coming, or a draw game where it will come back to haunt us of not having that extra guy in the box.
And you mentioned the middle linebacker for the Packers has always been, from Hawk to Barnett, from Barnett to Hawk, you had some good ones. I always thought Hawk was underrated. A lot of Packer fans they didn't really give him the respect that he deserved. Like, yeah, he wasn't the most flashy player. He didn't get a lot of picks. He didn't get a lot of sacks, but the man he made sure a running back didn't get further than 3-4 yards. Like he made sure of that. Now, Blake Martinez, on the other hand, literally all he did was make tackles. He did not make any big plays at all. He literally, he was a solid tackler. Like if he got his arms around you, you were going down for sure. But like he did not make any big plays. Like AJ Hawk would at least make a big play here and there. And Devondre Campbell's got some real big playability.
Yeah, and that's the thing that, especially with those linebackers in the middle, like they're not a lot of those guys. And I'll go back to AJ Hawk with that. Like AJ Hawk wasn't really like he said, he has some signature plays that he's made and big plays in big times, but he was a do your job guy. And if you're doing your job at that middle linebacker spot, it's not a very glorified position. I think we're used to the Urlachers or the big names at linebackers, the Ray Lewis's that were
Patrick Willis.
generational talents, but the majority of the inside linebackers, it's not a flashy position. It's kind of like playing fullback, where it's not a flashy position, but if you don't do your job, then you see big runs happen. A lot of from them is coming downhill and filling gaps and meshing with your D line. It's kind of like that same mesh with the quarterback receiver as the D line linebacker kind of situation where, okay, I know he likes to spin this way, so I gotta fill that gap so that's not open. And I think Campbell is fitting in that role very well. I think AJ Hawk did that role probably the best that I've seen as being like an adult Packer fan.
Yeah. And you mentioned here's another middle linebacker. I don't know, it's kind of easy one to forget. Desmond Bishop, because he was really athletic. He had a lot of potential, but he missed a lot of tackles. He wasn't in the right position. That's why the Packers gave up on him. But if he would have been able to develop, he would have been really good, but he just never developed that technique and not that head for the game either. He just never really developed that on a level that he needed to be a starting middle linebacker in the league.
Exactly. And I think it was this like linebackers an instinctual position. Like you just kind of know where to go. Like linebackers are born, not kind of made. Where like, and I think that like Campbell's a born linebacker where he just makes the right play. And he was playing young too. So it's like, all right, let's see how he develops through his career. And actually, once he starts seeing teams multiple times and learning, okay, that guy likes to do this on the offense that I played against in the division from the Lions 30 times or 5 times now. I know that this is how he usually does. Once he gets that, that's when he can get to that next all pro level, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like one thing, like just last year, I was so happy when I heard they resigned him because I saw him play last year. I'm like, this guy, this is a good solid middle linebacker who can make the plays, play sideline to sideline, has the ability to stay with tight ends and running backs in the passing game, knows how to shoot the gaps to make the plays. Like I was so glad when they resigned him. Like the guy they had before, Christian Kirksey, he was a 1-year rental. He wasn't all that great. He did the job, but
For
Campbell
sure.
really Campbell's really got a lot of ability.
For sure. And I would say the one thing in the defense that is going to be a real big catalyst to how good we are is going to be how Savage plays this year.
Very
Um,
much so.
and
Amos
Savage
too.
he's a high potential guy because he's probably one of the faster guys on the roster. I think, or at one point he was. But
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah.
him playing safety is going to be really, really big, especially in the run game, because I think his responsibility is going to be more of the downhill guy in that run game, just because of the lack of his awareness from what I've seen. And I haven't seen him much in the preseason, admittedly. I haven't watched. I kind of paid attention to him. I've been kind of looking more in the box, but his awareness is what he was lacking at. Like you said, physical ability, he had everything. Like he can make
Right.
plays stretch. He can go hash to hash and faster than most people in the NFL.
So
But
could Clinton Dixon. Look how fast they gave up on him.
exactly. So if Savage starts to decline this year, I think that's going to be the first one out of that defense to where you're like, okay, we can try more guys at that position. But I think it's going to lean a little bit on his how well he plays. He's going to be the weakest link of the Packers on the defensive side for me. But the weakest link on that defense is still a great player. So it's not saying that he's a bad player at all. But out of the players that we have on the field in that starting defense, he's the one that has to play well for the Packers to be good on that back end. Because the
Right.
corners are going to be
Exactly.
fine.
And you mentioned how he's going to have to be the more downhill safety, maybe the one you bring on the blitz, the one that makes the plays in the run, plays more of the short passing game. Yeah, because Adrian Amos, he's more the center field guy. He's more the free safety, patrolling the deep routes, picking up, intercepting the post routes, that type of thing. That's more Amos's job. He's more the free. Darnell Savage is more the strong. And Savage, like you said, just all that ability he has, he really has to harness that this year.
Yep, and especially and that it kind of goes back to the outside linebackers again. The better he plays, the more freedom the outside linebackers have to actually go, especially with the short passing game. A lot of quarterbacks now they're trying to hit it on the outside and give it to their guys so they can make plays, and that's when Savage is going to have to show up. And if you can't send that linebacker, the outside linebacker, Savage is going to have to be there to
Yes.
make that play. And
Mm-hmm.
again, he has a
Yeah.
speed too, but it's his awareness. We'll see how it goes this year.
Right. Exactly. And now that you mentioned, like if Savage can prove to be a good blitzer at the safety spot, what you then can do is you can run more like kind of what I like to call it a bluff. Like how like a outside linebacker looks like he's gonna rush and then boom, he just drops right
Yep.
back into coverage. That can be real effective as long as you got somebody else who's kind of filling that spot who can get in there and get that penetration. So
And especially with the success of the corners of the last couple of years, like Stokes came on well. You can run that cover
he's
three
gonna
over
break out.
top, and you can send them so you have a shell over top still. And our outside linebackers are athletic enough to where they can play the flats. Like they can play the flats well. That's where they get chances to make plays. A lot of those picks, like the picks on the curl routes and all that, come from those linebackers of, again, like you said, showing that bluff and sending the guy, because then he's unaccounted for coming for the blitz.
Right. Exactly. And that's so, I mean, there are a lot of variables this year, but I think if the guys really learn how to play, if the guys really learn how to continue to gel and just continue to play in sync and know their roles, the Packers could easily be a top defense. And that is going to be huge considering that the offense without Devontae Adams is going to take some time to really develop, even with the legend still playing quarterback.
for sure. And on the offensive side, again, I'll predict that our running backs will probably have their two best years combined for that. Just kind of because you said the situation. I do think that Lazard, as I think week 6, 7, and around that time, he's going to come on and start becoming the stud that he is. But I still think in that first couple week window, it's going to be tough. But then I know Aaron Rodgers, the player he is, and like, cerebral kind of player he is, he's going to get them on the right page because he has no choice now. He got paid a bunch of money and he lost his number one guy. So
Right.
he has to make it work.
Yeah. And you think like Dobbs and Watson, has he been hurt? I feel like he's been hurt the whole preseason.
I think so.
Yeah. But they've said a lot of good things about him when he got drafted. He's big, he's tall, he's fast, and all that. But like I said, Marcus Valdes-Scantling was tall and fast too. So
yeah,
we'll see. And they do. And Romeo Dobbs has made some plays in the preseason. I've seen him. So we'll see. They say that they are pretty high on him. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it's definite potential in the receiving core. I don't want to talk down on the receiving core because it's a ton of potential there. It's just more of, can they mesh? And like I said, I actually kind of like, for the long term, if we're going to stick with Jordan Love, I like kind of how this preseason played out, where they got actual game reps with the quarterback of the future that they can actually mesh with. So if we all do stay together and come together, that I think down the line, those guys are going to turn to one of those stud receiving cores. I think it's just right now, it's just a time thing for them.
Now you said those words, quarterback of the future, which poses the question, is Jordan Love the quarterback of the future?
I think he might be. And the reason why I say that is just because of the time he had to sit and watch Aaron Rodgers. That, and without the pressure of having to be the guy, because you see a lot of quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield, a lot of those guys that had to come in and be the guy right away. They weren't built for that. NFL's not a league that's built for young quarterbacks. Young quarterbacks are kind of a once in a wild kind of talent. And Jordan Love has everything. He has everything that you need to do it, but it's going to be if he can put it all together. And I think I'm hoping, I think maybe I'm more on the like hopeful side of, okay, I like that guy. I want him to be quarterback. But I'm a big guy with quarterbacks. You got to build. You can't just throw a guy in there and just assume he's going to be the best player on the team. Like, you have to actually build him. And he's had time, like Aaron Rodgers did, to sit behind Brett, to actually sit and watch the situational stuff. Now, they know the plays, but okay, if Aaron Rodgers is doing a job as a mentor to actually like, hey, so I did this in this situation because I saw this, he's going to pick that up. And he's had about 3 years now? Or is it 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, this is his third year in the league. About his third year in the league.
So he's had 2 years to actually sit and watch it. And he had an MVP season to watch too. And those quarterback rooms with the coaches are very, very effective for younger guys like that to see what he saw.
Right. And you mentioned, Aaron Rodgers sitting behind Brett Favre. It's just, to me, I do not like the way Packer fans talk about Jordan Love. They just literally, they saw him. I think almost like I want to say they saw him make one throw and gave up on him. Like literally, like my brother-in-law says this. A guy I used to work with said this. He said like, "Oh, Jordan Love sucks. He's not the guy." Like, how do we really don't know that? Aaron Rodgers, he didn't really look all that great in his first game action. Like, I mean, it was very limited. And, we saw Jordan Love had a game last year where he didn't look good. So I'm not sold that he'll be great, but I mean, it's like people just immediately writing him off. Career backup, will be a bust. Like, how do you know this?
And
I think this.
Yeah, and I think it comes because we're the most spoiled franchise for quarterback of all time. Like,
very true.
Having the quarterbacks that we had play here, starting with Brett and Aaron, and
30 years.
Yeah, so it's more. I think the fan base doesn't understand that every quarterback isn't Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. Like, and so you have to be able to build it. And I don't think think about it, even our backups that we said were terrible ended up going places and being starters for the most part, or at least consistently in that starting kind of rotation kind of guys. And I think we have just a really, really high shelf of what's good or bad at quarterback just because of what we saw. And that's not really the fans' fault. I think it's more of just situational, like when you had 2 generational talents back to back, like what are you going to do there?
Right, exactly. And you see a little bit of game action, you immediately write this guy off as sucks. It just doesn't, is that he sucks. I'm just not with that. I mean, people have a right to their opinions. I get it, but the truth is like Jordan Love, yeah, he has a lot of work to do, but there is talent there. He can run, he can throw the ball far. He needs a lot of work on his accuracy. That is one thing he does. He has missed some open receivers. That is one thing. And not just in his reads have to be better too. Because I remember watching that Chiefs game. Not only did he like missed some throws to open receivers. Sometimes he just flat out missed them. Like he didn't even see them, and he threw to Adams or threw to somebody who was double or triple teamed, and obviously didn't work out well. But it's not fair to just say this man is a bust already and that he's a career backup or whatever people want to call him. It's just not fair right now.
Yeah, and I think that what you speak of just comes with time. It comes with reps. Like at the quarterback, you have to have reps. You have to have in-game, and he hasn't had a lot of time because Aaron, for the most part, has been pretty healthy throughout his career. I mean, he had a couple bigger injuries, yeah, but since Love has been there, Love hasn't played a whole lot. And that quarterback, the only thing that can make you better as a quarterback is in-game playing time to actually see how fast, because the practice defense is not moving like the Seahawks defense at the back of the day or like the Bills defense. They're not moving that quick, and everything is happening a million times faster for him. So even with his reads, I think that's the biggest thing with his reads. Like that read may have been open at practice. Every practice rep he took, that read may have been open. But now when he's seeing guys going 100%, it's a lot different to try to, okay, I got to go to where, because in his mind, he might have said, okay, that guy's going to always be open. And now the secondary or the third or fourth read is, I think, where he's going to struggle at until he gets playing time.
Right. Yeah. You got to learn how to look off. And that, like you said, it's just something with time. You got to learn how to look off the first read and get into your progression and find that second or third guy or even that fourth guy. But just into a point about what I've been making about the fans and how they've just like given up on Jordan Love. The third string quarterback who's been getting a lot of reps in the preseason in the second half against third and fourth stringers, guys who probably aren't going to make the team, Danny Etling, he's made some good plays. Like he had a big touchdown run. He's been accurate. I mean, his completion percentage is high, and immediately you have fans saying this should be the backup quarterback. This guy has been cut a few times for a reason.
Yeah.
No, Jordan Love should still be the backup. I would keep Etling as a third string. Don't get me wrong, for sure, but no, he should not be the primary backup. No.
And that's why I say we're Packer fans. I don't think we have a proper way of evaluating quarterbacks, because I go back to a name from the past of Matt Flynn. He's one that he had a great game against the Lions where he threw a bunch of touchdowns, got a big contract at the Seahawks, and was a bust there.
Russell Wilson beat him out.
Exactly. And Russell's a generational talent too. So that's kind of a tough one, but especially in the preseason, and I don't know if a lot of the fans know, if you're playing in the third and fourth quarter of the preseason, you're probably, like you said, you're trying to make the team. You're not even sniffing playing time yet, because at that point, all of the guys that are your guys are on the bench to preserve them from not getting hurt. And I think that's what the one thing I go back to. Packer fans don't know how to evaluate quarterbacks because of the quarterbacks we've had, and they see big plays being made. They have the flashes of Favre running around and making plays, and they see it like, okay, he's the guy. But they have to realize that, like, again, those were generational talent. Those were once in a lifetime for organizations, quarterbacks. Right. So you might catch one of those every 20 years. We just caught two in the span of like 10 years, and it made our evaluation kind of bad.
All right, exactly. So we'll see what he does. But I mean, yeah, we're at a minute, so we gotta wrap it up. Because but yeah, so we'll see what happens. I mean, I still believe in him. I mean, he's got a lot of work to do. Don't get me wrong, but I still believe in him. So
I'm gonna ask you quick. Prediction time. What do you give us in record for the year? So we got like a minute left. So
if I go 11-6, 12-5, something like that.
I was gonna say around 12-5 this year. Playing the AFC, that division is gonna be tough. If we can get 2 out of that, that'll be I think that'll be good for us. But I think we should be able to hold down our division pretty well this year. With our defense, I think we should.
No, most definitely. And the other teams still aren't all that great. So,
yep.
All right. So that's it for Getting for the Wisconsin Sports Packers edition. I'm John Giddings.
I'm Kenny Campbell.
All right.
We'll see you guys next time.
Absolutely.
Peace out.